Hello. I'm going to talk about the Modor NF-1m and the sound editing on this mini Modor. This is the small version of the Modor NF-1 synthesizer. The NF-1 was released around 2015 and was a large, knobby, proudly digital synthesizer. I was very attracted to its sound, but the size and price were not a good fit for my studio. In 2017, Modor released the mini Modor, the NF-1m. Now I've been burnt by synths in the past that have just 2 lines of LCD text and not a lot of controls. How does this stack up? What is editing like on this? Well, fortunately, editing on this box is a bit more like an Electron box than it is some of these old Yamaha synths where you had to kind of go value to value and hit increment and decrement or only had one knob to turn. Unlike an Electron, all of these knobs, except for select, are pots, and they range from this range to that range. You have these 5 knobs down here, plus select and val for most of your sound editing. You move between modes with these function knobs. These have multiple pages in them, but they are only about 2 to 4 pages deep on most. For example, filter has the multi-mode filter. Push again, you're in the formant filter. Push again, you're back into the main multi-mode one. So starting from an initialized preset, this has 1 oscillator active. Oscillators 2 and 3 are tuned down. Let's customize the sound a little bit. So how do we work with this? Well, we are on the oscillator page. If we move through them, we get to oscillator pitch, oscillator mix, and an overall pitch control. But the main page, the first page, is this oscillator settings. You select oscillators 1, 2, and 3 with the select knob, and as you can see, it is highlighting different ones. You can work on multiple oscillators at the same time. We're going to stick with oscillator 1 right now, and we can see we've got volume, tuning, mod, wave, LFO, and env. Well, we can see that volume, tune, and mod go to 1, 2, and 3, but we have 3 on the bottom as well. Wave is selected by the value knob. As you can see in other videos that review the Modor, they dig into some more of these waveforms. But we have kind of the standard analog style waveforms of saw, square, and triangle. And these are sweepable with this mod. So the kind of the sweepable pulse width modulation that most synthesizers these days have. But mod can change based on the wave. As we get past the standard ones, sync is a sync wave that only takes up 1 oscillator, and it is good for making kind of those talky sounds, good for basses. We have this additive wave where mod changes your fundamentals. And we have the FM waves, FM and feedback FM, which are 2 operator FM with a carrier and a modulator. And we're about to get into one of the areas where there is a secret key combination to edit the carrier and modulator ratios. But before that, here the env, or the mod, is your FM amount, And we can use the end which is tied to envelope 1 for oscillator 1. Oscillator 2 goes to envelope 2. Oscillator 3 uses envelope 3 in the envelope generator to work with this mod envelope. And with FM, that gives you that kind of expressive sound. Even more in the feedback FM. Now we can change the carrier and modulator settings through a shortcut that was added in OS version 3 at the time of this recording. The latest OS is version 5. OS version 3 added this shortcut where holding down mod and turning knob 4 or 5 will change the FM carrier for knob 4 and modulator we can also have this affected by the LFO amount by setting the LFO knob. Let's turn the LFO back to 0 and change the mod, bring the mod env back, and let us look at the envelope settings. So we tap envelope, you see now we have 4 envelopes. The 4th envelope is your amp envelope. We have the same multi-select capabilities that we had for on the oscillators. It's only the oscillator and the envelopes that have this multi-select setting. So envelope 1 is default to the mod of oscillator 1. So let's tweak this a little bit. And we can turn loop on these envelopes and effectively make them into custom LFOs. And if we hit envelope again, we get these extra settings, time to level 1 and level 2. These envelopes on the NF1 are a little more like the Yamaha synthesizers of having a couple extra stages. And that is just a single oscillator, no filter, no effects yet, just one oscillator using the feedback FM and the mod. Let's set it oscillators 2 and 3 together. So, yeah, we'll use a square wave. Tune it down an octave. go tap this again to the second oscillator page of pitch, and we can do fine tuning of oscillators 2 and 3 to offset them from each other. The third page in the oscillator section is the oscillator mix, and here we can do all of the oscillators together. Now we have just oscillators 2 and 3. Now just oscillator 3. We can also bring in white noise and a ring mod of oscillators 2 and 3 into the mix. And you can also control the patch level on here with the value. Finally, in OS, we have a pitch section where you can set pitch LFOs, portamento, the LFO speed for the low track sample and hold, which is the default, or use a pinch envelope, which is, we'll use envelope 1. And that is working with the oscillators. Now you notice we have these two large knobs here, def 1 and def 2. These can be defined per patch, and by default they are filter frequency and filter resonance, which makes them kind of good for common usage of working with synths and kind of playing sounds live. We tend to like to grab the filter. We can work with the filter by touching Filter, and the first page is the multi-mode filter. Select works with the type, and it has high pass, band stop, and low pass. We can hook it to an LFO. Or an envelope, which is envelope 2 by default. K is your keyboard tracking, which I'm going to leave off. And down here at the bottom, value is bound to frequency. Knob 4 is the resonance. Now the other filter on here is the formant filter. And let's bring that into the mix. And it too can be controlled by the LFO, an envelope. I believe this one is bound to LFO to envelope 3 by default. So you can have the formant filter fade in differently than the multi-mode filter. And you can route them to be in serial or parallel. Now looking at the LFOs, LFO1 is bound by default to oscillators 1, 2, and 3 to their mod setting, and you can, the nice thing here is not only can you set the speed, but you can set the depth for each oscillator. LFO1 is a polyphonic LFO re-triggered on every key for each voice. LFO2 goes to the filter and to the formant filter, can be synced to the LFO to the clock speed. LFO3 is basically just the mod wheel, and all you can do is affect the speed. And the last one is the sample and hold speed setting in LFO. Again, these are pretty quick to move through when you need to, and if you want to use LFO and part of your part of your sound design, you can use the mod matrix, you can use these DEF1s and DEF2s to wire those in. Lastly, we do have effects, and there is a chorus, which is really a comb filter, and these different settings can turn it into a very comb filter, metallic sound. They can turn it into a flange sound or into a chorus. The delay is similar. It can be synced to your LFO Lastly, we have the mod matrix, and this is where we have many pages, kind of one for each, what they call wires. You have 7 wires you can connect to anything. There come preset settings by default, but they're all set to 0. There are a lot of destinations for these, including the various timings of the envelopes, which you can actually feed back to themselves to create very uniquely shaped envelopes. Combine that with the looping or use that on the FM sounds to really get some kind of classic Yamaha style sounds. So there, I just connected the low pass sample and hold, which is instead of a very stepped sample and hold, there's a little bit of fade between values, to the pan amount, and then went to the LFO page to turn down the volume. And that is quick overview, well, kind of quick at 20 plus minutes, of sound editing on the Modor NF-1m. You move through pages very quickly with these buttons. The interface is very responsive. All of these are pots. You can turn it on to a safety mode or not. I have safety mode disabled. Safety mode basically means catch. When I first got this, I preferred the catch to kind of have to turn it to the value in order to change it. But since these are pots, I kind of realized that, oh, I know right where I want that oscillator mod amount to be, or the oscillator envelope amount to be. And these become kind of very quickly to move through. These are defined functions, allow you to make this perform kind of per patch, allow you to set these nice big knobs to a value that you might want to change a lot. And that is a very nice feature. But now that we've made our sound, let's do a quick dive into the menus to see how to save. So as you touch this menu button, you go through the menus, and when you get to what you want, you let go for a second, it catches up. So we're going to go to name. And we're going to call this knit. And to save a sound, tap twice for save, and it gives you, a nice thing is it lets you preview the sounds you're about to overwrite. I can overwrite that and hit save. Our sound is saved. You can turn on and off the preview on load and save if you want to use this live and kind of be holding down keys and preparing your next sound to load. You can turn that off. But it is a very handy feature when loading. You can kind of just preview what you want to load, and if it's not what you want, just exit. That is the NF-1m. I think it is a terrific sounding synth, and the size of this, which is not much bigger than a Korg Volca, we put that all the way over, and a little bit smaller than a Roland Boutique, they've really made this interface pretty nice to use, and I think it is definitely worth checking out and buying. If you're looking for a good general purpose poly, they can get you FM sounds, some keyboard sounds, leads, pads. It really excels at. This synth has a lot of great character to it. The formant filter and the comb filter really kind of give you some extra sound design capabilities not found too many other places. I really like how they just made the comb filter be your chorus, flange, comb. You kind of get 3 effects in one there and can make that part of your sound design. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was informative about this lovely mini Modor.